Welcome to Vibe with Humanity. This is a podcast that's in NorCal, but I am excited to do one here with you, and I'm super grateful that you're willing to come on and hosting it in your backyard. This is not CGI. This is not AI. This is really where we're sitting right now. There's streams and coconuts and fruits and chickens over there and birds you've never heard. And
yeah, you probably have to edit out all the roosters.
and it has the same vibe as you, just super mellow. Let me tell you. So I had car trouble at your coffee spot the other day, and you were like, dude, do you need to take my truck? And you meant it. I guarantee if I would have said, actually, yeah, you'd been like, all right, man. And that's just how.
I'm off at 1.
Yeah,
Bring it back.
That's how the island feels. So, dude, thanks for joining, and I'm super pumped to hear from you, man.
Cool, right on.
Yeah, well, so you spend most of your time on the Big Island, right? And recently moved to Kauai?
Yeah, most of my life I spent on Big Island. And yeah, Kauai's been, I lived in Kauai on and off most of my life actually. But Big Island's been home base. And came out here a lot to stay with my grandmother. She lived down on the south side. And she passed away last year, but
oh, sorry.
She was stoked. She was like, I got my ticket. I'm out.
Yeah,
like, stick around for a day, Grandma. People want to say bye.
Yeah.
She's like, all right, one more day.
That's awesome. So she just viewed it as a transition, huh?
Yeah.
I don't think we die. I think
she was like, how do I get the ticket? I'm ready to go. I'm in my 90s, She was stoked.
Good life.
So, and
what do you think is the coolest part of growing up on the Big Island? That Hawaiian culture, like something that we wouldn't know, or your favorite part about it?
Well, I have roots in Big Island and here in Kauai and San Diego. I lived when I was a little kid in San Diego, and my favorite thing I think about Big Island is it's very country, and it's very like here. Kauai's very soft. On Big Island, if I was walking around, you would have hit your toes on like 1,000 rocks already.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a much different landscape.
Everything's soft here. Yeah.
I'm a surfer and a diver, so I love the diving on Big Island. I worked as a diver there for years and years, and as far as the community on Big Island, it's a pretty special place.
Yeah.
Everybody. When I was younger, it's like. Everybody would wave that you drove by. It's a little different now. I guess the city is a little more the city, it's a little more built up. But I farmed for years in Kohala, the northern tip of Big Island. And there's a lot of one-lane bridges and everything. And if you don't know somebody, you always wave at them and smile, have eye contact going by. You say hi to everybody, like there's no walking by somebody without acknowledging that their presence exists in some sort of way.
So
a lot of times, you go other places in the world and
like California.
Like,
yeah, dude, you go to California, you'll walk by.
Everyone's a racehorse with their blinders on.
Yeah, they're moving very fast and doing everything they can to not make eye contact. And then when you finally do flag someone, you're like, "What's up, man? How's your day?" They're all happy and shocked and stuff.
And it's like it's part of I think in like all of Hawaii and Kauai especially too, as well as you see people and there's a lot of listening going on and questions, like people look at you and they're like, how you doing?
Yeah.
And they kind of, it's a little bit more, piercing, but not in like a intrusive way. And like, I'm not doing the basic, like, high five and go. It's like, all right, I see that you exist, but right underneath, you're you. Like, how are you?
Yeah, it's crazy. Like every person that I've interacted with, like checking out at stores or just saying hi, or vendor carts or people walking on the beach, they like stop their world to spend time with you, and you can tell when they ask like, "What's up?" Like they're ready to get into a conversation. It's really cool. It's such a great culture.
That's I think like when people say, you hear a lot of people say like, oh, aloha is gonna like save the world, right? It's kind of just that of, having a good energy and just being in tune and acknowledging other people exist. That kind of thing is really important.
It helps here, man. There's some kind of spirit or energy or vibration that emanates from this island that just like, if you walk around barefoot on it, man, you feel it. You just
Yeah.
feel slower. Every time I leave and go home, I can't believe how much faster everything is. It's crazy.
I
No,
bet.
seriously, people in line trying to get through, cutting people out. There's this feeling of tension. Then you come out here and you
Oh yeah.
step on this soil and you're just like, oh, so there's something to that I know,
Yeah.
right?
Everywhere in the world's different. You know, I was uh, in China flying from Indonesia, and I'm taking a piss, and the person in line to piss is like 2 feet behind me. I'm
Yes.
like, sup? Kind of weird.
Yeah. Pretty weird, man.
I'll get though. You don't know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. So tell me about your childhood. What was it like?
My childhood, when I was really young, gosh, so I lived in like say my, I don't really remember being a young kid that well. I'm the youngest of 6 kids. My
Okay.
youngest memory is like holding onto my brother's shoulders and neck, body surfing. And I remember like my brother's neck was so big, I was like struggling to keep my hands like together around his neck,
Huh.
catching waves. And I that's kind of cool. I always like
That's a cool memory.
my oldest brother. I'm always like, oh well, you gave me that, so I'll let you get away with this or whatever.
That's good.
You gave me the waves. All right, cool. You do you.
That's awesome.
But
So a lot of outdoor stuff and
yeah, I'm kind of I don't know. I guess you could say an environmentalist at heart, or that kind of thing. I've always been a plant person. I always had a lot of plants around me, building gardens in the backyard, and potted plants on the windowsill and the roof of the house and the side yard, like everywhere you could have. And
that's awesome.
so I've always been really into that, and taking that time to I always I always enjoyed that kind of quiet, like the little things, and that's what's nice about plants is a lot of little important things, and it's kind of a different, love language you could say, and
For sure.
and how you interact with the world around you. So
For sure.
I always like that.
I like how they're alive and connected with us in a way that we really don't get.
Yeah.
And it's like provable now. They have something called Kilrian
Sunny.
photography. What's up, Sonny? For those of you who can't see, there's an amazing Hawaiian cat that just rolled up, orange with green eyes. Yeah. So yeah, no, the plants, like one of my friends, she had a plant that she couldn't keep alive, and her mom told her like, hey, just go give it a kiss every day.
Yeah.
And she's like, what are you talking? Okay, sure. And it completely came back and flourished, which is kind of crazy to think about. So plants, when you're drawn to those, I think it can be a spiritual activity for sure.
Right.
What do you think
Definitely.
the most notable event of your childhood was that made you who you are today?
Well, that's a hard one, but I know around third grade I had read. I used to really into these books by Clive Cussler. They're like James Bond books, but they're about a marine biologist who's like a James Bond type character. I was really into that in elementary school, and there's one book about like the end of the world because of a red tide that was like fed by. I think they made a movie about it later. I don't know if it's in the movie, but there's a red tide or an algae bloom that sucks all the oxygen out of the ocean, and basically the planet's about to end because the oxygen's decreasing. And I just thought it was a book, or whatever. And then there's a major red tide actually where I lived, and fish are washing up dead on the beach, and it's really cool because it makes phosphorescence. So there's this kind of, the waves glow and they break. You run across the wet sand on the beach at night, and your footprints glow. So it's this
Wow.
phosphorescent algae, however you say it, is really awesome. But the red tide bloom kind of sucks up all the oxygen and kills everything that's dependent on oxygen in the water, and creates a dead sea zone.
Wow.
Where I was living, a dead sea zone happened, and it's just dead stuff washing up on the beach. And I'd read this book and I knew what it was. And I was like, oh wow, that wasn't just like a, kind of a fantasy in this book. That's like something that really does happen. And I started learning about it, and learned about just the modern day agriculture and how the chemical fertilizers are washing down rivers and causing algae blooms with all phosphates and that kind of stuff, nitrates in the water that are causing the algae to bloom and create these dead zones. I think there's permanent dead zones now, like in the Gulf of Mexico from all the agriculture in the United States coming down. But so it's a really serious issue that people don't like to talk about. And
I've never even heard about it. So no,
yeah,
they're
it's
not
algae
talking about
blooms.
it.
They have massive algae blooms in Florida every year that are killing everything. I mean, it's actually this crazy global phenomena from the agriculture chemicals, basically, that's killing the oceans. Yeah, and we're 100% dependent on the oceans. You know, we think oxygen tree, well, you know, times 10 oxygen ocean, right? So they're both very important. And yeah, so that kind of like, that's what woke me up, you could say, out of like a childhood play
So it's
into
traumatic.
like the world has, you know, real issues. The environment has issues and it's under stress. And that was probably the beginning of that, you know.
Of what? Like, how did that impact you?
Guess you could say career or lifestyle of really caring about the earth. Yeah. So
That's really cool. So it was kind of it sounds like it was traumatic in a way to see that.
yeah, I mean, I don't think, you know, traumatic's the right word for me, because I've experienced shit that's felt traumatic, and it was more just like maybe it was my first, you know, experience feeling what it's like to be a man and warrior up. You know, that like oh, there's, you know, similar to if you were, you know, back in the day or certain places in the world right now, and you're suddenly at war or something.
Yeah.
If you're a guy and girls, honestly, you're just gonna warrior up immediately, or maybe cower. I don't know, but you know, so the first thing that happened in my life was like, okay, there's a stance to be made. You know, there's something to stand up for, with, and that's basically the earth and the way
Yeah.
the way that the world is treating it right now. That being said, I'm not like a hardcore environmentalist. So I tell everyone they're doing something wrong or whatever. It's just
how
like,
does that, like, what do you practice to try to at least do your part per se?
well, I really study permaculture, and you know, on Big Island, I studied with a lot of really rad elders who are farming old school Hawaiian ways, and really learned about the ecology of the islands, and you know,
So you can live in
hydrology
harmony
along with that, and yeah, how to live in harmony, that kind of thing.
That's cool, man.
Yeah, definitely.
So high school was in the Big Island then for you, or were you here by then?
You know, I got expelled from school in 8th grade. Actually,
you did?
Yeah. I don't tell anybody that.
For what?
I got
Can
in trouble.
say?
I was 13 and I wanted to live with my dad. And my dad at the time lived in Oregon. And you know, I'm not blaming my mom, but my mom was like, dude, you're not going to like living with your dad. No way. And I fought for it and fought for it. And I reacted, and I think I got kind of really down about it. And, you know, just started really rebelling hard and kind of rebelling against everything going on. And I was pretty much a straight A student until that point, you know, in life. And yeah, I got in some trouble. I got actually whirlwind. This is like a whole trip, but
Send it.
yeah, so I was diagnosed as, you know, mentally depressed or whatever, depression and all that kind of thing. I don't remember what the doctor said because it doesn't really apply to me and who I am, but I was basically because I had gotten in trouble and there was court stuff going on and everything, I had to go in like a rehabilitation program. So,
like behavior mod?
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
You know, you could think of like military school in a way, but more of like a rehabilitation. You know, because I had done like certain drugs and that kind of thing.
The troubled teen industry type stuff, like
yeah,
reform school?
And it was an industry. It's got shut down actually.
Well, is it CEDU or WASP or does it?
I don't remember.
I went to one too.
Oh, cool! Yeah, we're gross. Yeah, so I was sent to Mexico.
Okay.
To an outsourced one in Mexico.
Yeah.
For a year.
Okay.
And it was very much like these different levels you got to work up, and they all take time, and there's a point system, and
Yep.
to gain points, you're supposed to rat out people breaking the rules, and
Yes.
only 3 people can be talking, 2 people can't talk,
Yeah.
but one of the 3 people has to be a level whatever. It was fucking insane.
Yep.
It was the most like, what do you call it, Babylon shit you've ever heard of, man.
Was there a lot of hard labor too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I was safe. Like, nobody was beating my ass.
Yeah.
And my, you're a big dude. My brothers are big like you. I don't know how I ended up shorter, but I could kick some fucking ass. I did martial arts as a kid. Like,
and you're the youngest.
I'm like, kind of, I got a pitch to me when I was a teenager. So, but yeah, so it's not like I wasn't safe, but
Were
it was
there like
fucking
adults
gnarly.
yelling at you and stuff too? Like, did you do like therapy sessions with bizarre exercises and shit? I did one where like
bizarre.
Yeah, like I had like one of them, like you had to get up and this is so messed up. I don't think I've even said this on camera, but you had to get up in front of a bunch of guys and get into your boxers and draw a picture of your body and start pointing out stuff that you don't like about your body and that you're insecure. That was one little 30-minute exercise of a whole weekend of those things that happen like every other month. And then we did things like that 3 times a week. And I look back on it now and I'm like, I don't see any therapeutic value to that, you pervert.
Yeah, that's totally like, what the.
So, did you have stuff like that?
Not in that sense. We did have to like, do these group therapy sessions. The only time you got to talk, really. And gosh, I'm trying to remember. I know that they had seminars and you had to do these things, and they put your parents through this shit too. They totally had your parents in this whole brainwashing thing. It was fucking insane.
Yeah, dude.
I kind of got in trouble a lot. I tried to like, escape a couple times, and like, so I was more like, holding the book against the wall with my nose and holding my arms out kind of shit.
Yeah.
Or just like sitting on the wooden bench, perfect posture.
Yep.
An hour is going by, just like, and I was kind of zen, I'm like, you guys.
Yeah, I'm from Hawaii. I can do this all day, dude.
But
wow. So was there anything helpful from it?
They had a lot of tapes playing that were like very brainwashing, and so it wasn't helpful for me because it turned me into. Maybe it was helpful because I was so like insistent on holding into like my programming, like, which I feel like is like God's plan and the the projection we're supposed to do in life, that I had to go like just completely rebel against the system I was really young during that. It was like about 13 for a year. And yeah, I don't think I did anything involved in the system whatsoever for probably another 10 years at least.
Okay.
Everywhere I worked, I've always hated money, hated all of that
so
shit.
By the system, you mean like in a way, the Matrix?
Yeah. Fuck the Matrix.
Yeah.
Which, being a rebel is like, takes so much energy, and it's a separation. And, I went extreme a lot of times in my life, like fasting for a large amount of time, or, I'm just going to like, go up in the mountains here and not talk to anybody for a few months and camp on my own. I did a lot of crazy shit as a teenager. Like, now I'm going to grow all my own food and I don't even need metal. I'm just going to have sticks and stones and farm and drink the water out of the stream, just like.
Did you live like that too?
Yeah, I lived like that several times in my life.
That's amazing.
I still had modern stuff, like
of course,
like clothes.
I bet you were happier doing that than if you were in some like 9 to 5 or sitting in a.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I had a cool dog and we went on adventures. And
so did you stop school after 8th grade? You just
I went to Big Island. I went back to San Diego for a little while as a teenager, just because a lot of my friends on Big Island were just, the teenage culture was very much like warrior party. Not that it wasn't like that in San Diego as well, but it was much more like groovy party.
Okay. Yeah.
I was like, I'll go groove.
Yeah.
Yeah. I went to 10th grade. I made a fake transcript, and I hadn't gone to school for 2 years. I went to 10th grade. Everything was going super smooth, like top student, all about it. And I got into some trouble. We like ditched school to go surf, and we were so dumb, dude. We had like a bong we made with an acrylic pipe that was like 6 feet long, and it's like the person in the front seat's lighting it, and the person in the back seat's smoking it. You know, it's just the dumbest shit ever. And surfboards on the roof, and just like I got pulled over.
Oh, dang.
Got in trouble, like, and totally smart ass with the cops and everything. And then
that only works in the movies.
Made all my friends laugh.
Yeah.
But then they're like, oh, you need to like redo all this school. You can go to a charter school for X amount of time. And then next year you can restart this grade. It was like this whole complicated thing. And I was like, I'm good.
Yeah, I'll just go be an entrepreneur.
So I went, I left, and I was like, well, I got to do something. And my friend had a school called the Self-Heal School. And then I went to another school, the School of Healing Arts, and it was a really good time. I studied shiatsu, massage, herbal medicine making. I worked in a tea shop, pouring like traditional tea ceremony. Learned some really cool stuff from the people there. Philosophy. We practiced Tai Chi, Qigong. So I was like, it was the biggest blessing ever getting kicked out of my attempt at school. You got to go live. Yeah, I had the best. I worked at a hippie grocery store in the produce department. We'd climb up on the roof and smoke weed and do Tai Chi on the roof and like just rad people.
Dude, you literally have the
teenage years.
You have the life of what I would have expected. Like from someone that's from the islands. That's incredible.
Yeah, and then after that, I was on Big Island, living up in the mountains, and I had this kind of dream of
like commune or by yourself?
With a couple friends. There was like a Rastafarian inheritance guy who was like, you know, oh, I inherited this land and it's so cool. And then I met him, and it's, you know, it's like a few miles on this dirt road, all slippery, 4-wheel drive to get up there, and then it's just like epic streams and waterfalls and springs, and then I was like, hey, you know, I'll like restore this area for you. And that's when I first got into native plants. I was going up in the forest higher and gathering seeds of different native trees, and fenced off this big area on the spring. I started planting canoe plants, which is like the plants that Polynesian voyagers brought with them for food and medicine, clothing, everything they needed, and the native plants that arrived to Hawaii through wind, bird, flotsam, you know, floating on the ocean, that kind of thing. So, yeah, it was a really special time, and that's how I have my daughter. Actually, that's when my daughter was conceived. You know, during that time.
How old were you
in the
then?
Mountains. I think my daughter was born when I was 21. Yeah, her birthday's a couple months before mine. I turned 22. Maybe she was 2 or 3 months old.
Wow.
Yeah, you know, that's a whole
dude,
story in itself.
That's crazy.
That was my next biggest challenge, was facing the fact that I had, you know, gotten this girl pregnant. Basically,
dude, tell me. I mean, what was that like? You're living in heaven and bliss and stuff, and then it's like, oh,
well, you
I
know,
gotta raise a kid. Like, what do I do?
My daughter's mom was like super hot and super cool. I mean, she is the coolest woman ever. I just love her to death. But we have no relationship compatibility.
Okay.
But you don't really know that sometimes.
Right.
Especially when you're young.
Especially when you're young and full of hormones. And,
you're into the same kind of stuff, and oh yeah, you can dive that deep in the ocean.
Yeah,
I like that.
Let's do it.
Yeah, cool. You can hold your breath longer than me. All right. You know?
Yeah.
That makes a chick cool, right? Among other things, but yeah, she told me she was pregnant, and I was like, no way. And I couldn't really process it. I left where I was living up in the mountains. I went back down to Kona Town, it's kind of South Kona on Big Island. And I had this strong message at the time, a spiritual message, that everything I was doing, I should really be doing with people, and kind of bring the mountain back down. And so I kind of always been working my way down the mountain ever since that early 20s. I'm 35 now, so kind of working my way back to the ocean. And yeah, so I didn't really. I got this job. I built this big organic garden for a burger place, which was super fun. I mean,
that must have been
cool people working there, and I kind of distracted myself. I had like a Mercedes Benz running off their vegetable oil from the French fry machine, and a diesel Mercedes running off the oil, and I was just still rebelling hard. No insurance, no registration, no driver's license. About to have a kid and driving off vegetable oil. Oh man, my new little plot. My life has been like one garden plot to the next.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Yeah, when my daughter's was about 5 months pregnant, I went to reconnect with her. She told me when she was pregnant, and I couldn't process it, and I went to reconnect with her, and she was having trouble processing it herself. She was working caretaking this elderly couple, and she was caretaking them, not caretaking herself. So I get there, I went to go reconnect with her and talk to her finally.
Yeah.
Way too long. I waited way too long, but the 13th hour has been a terrible theme that I've just recently fixed. Yeah, so I got up there, and then my friend, this really cool guy Yuri, he rolls up right around the same time, and he's like, "Hey, I just got a call. There's a beehive in the roof. We're gonna remove the bees. Can you help me?" And I'm like, "Cool, let's do this." So he's tearing apart the porch roof, and my daughter's mom's there, and she's helping, and I'm he's scraping the honeycomb out of the roof and handing it to me, and I'm handing it to her, and she's rubber banding it. And I mean, it's just like a beehive, and we're not in bee suits or anything. And I'm getting stung here and there, but I'm still just like in that kind of young warrior mode.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I get stung by bees and all the mana, and I was just so it was cool though,
Yeah.
And she gets stung to shit, and so she's
pregnant.
laying in her bed, and she can't close her finger. She's so swollen up, and then it just hit me. I don't know if it was all the bee venom going through my veins or what, but it just hit me like she's not taking care of herself, taking care of these people. So while she's kind of incapacitated, I packed up all her shit, put it in the trunk of my car, my veggie oil Benz, and went to the homeowners, and I'm like, "Hey, she quits," and I picked her up and put her in the back seat of my car, and drove to the little coffee shop in town. And I was like, well, what do I do next? I've actually been living in a hammock in like this little garden plot I have.
Oh boy.
Fuck, dude.
What'd you do?
People say you're never ready to have kids, but some of us are way less ready than others. And my kid is so cool. Like, you couldn't believe how cool she is. And I ran into my buddy, and he's like, "Hey, I'm leaving town for a month. I'm going to the airport right now. So glad to see you. Any chance you could house sit for me?" I mean, it was just like, So I went and house sat his spot. It's got a big bathtub. We reconnected. She ended up having kidney stones. We didn't know what it was. And she had to do weeks of healing. And then, in this time of like 1 month, she went from 5 months pregnant, not looking pregnant, to just 6 months pregnant and just beautiful, blossoming. And we spent I got a job managing it. I moved to a ranch from there, horseback ranch and cattle ranch in Honoka'a town, and did that for a while. And then I got a job managing an organic farm in Kona, and moved over there and tried to make it work, and be the man. And we're like, what is it? Oil and vinegar or whatever.
Okay. Oil and water.
Oil and water, yeah.
Vinegar too.
I'm a little vinegary. But my daughter was born at home. It was super beautiful, and
that's awesome.
Yeah, she was born in this old building. We lived in this cool apartment, second floor story. It was super old school, you know. There's like the porch downstairs. All the aunties sold their fruit every day, and you know, the auntie that owned the antique store is always out there, and they're always gossiping, and I'm always walking by and talking story, and you know, she's always yelling at me that I walk too loud upstairs. She called me elephant feet. But my daughter was born in the afternoon. It was totally old school. I like stuck my head out the window. I'm like, it's a girl. And I hear everybody downstairs, woo! And then 2 hours later, there's like piles of baby stuff outside of our door. Like, they were all just waiting, you know. They're like, oh, Mason's a hippie. He hates plastic. He's going to like raise his kid in like one organic blanket, you know. Like, we're just giving him everything he needs. Forget about that. But, and that was really special. And so that was probably that second biggest, you know, obstacle I had to overcome in my life from that early teenage years.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And
so you eventually got stable and like.
Yeah, you know,
Are
I
you
had
with
a
her,
really
her
good
mom
thing.
still?
Yeah, me and her mom we've been like best friends for years and years.
But you're not together?
No.
Okay.
She got remarried like
Okay.
after we split up, and she has more kids. She's super happy and in love, and it's great. I mean, it's like the most ideal situation, you know. You just have to get through the stuff to get there, and it is what it is.
Wow. Dude, right on, man.
Yeah.
You mentioned kind of your spiritual life and God's plan and finding your purpose and your dharma.
Yeah.
Are you comfortable talking about your spiritual beliefs and life and stuff?
Yeah, I mean,
why do you think you're here?
Fuck, good
Too
one.
deep. Yeah, that was way too far.
Good question. You know, I think, well, I don't know really. I've always felt so much like ancestral support. You know,
Describe
and spirituality.
Like
I've felt,
Hawaiian ancestral?
No, I'm you know, my ancestors are from all over the world, but
Sure.
not actually Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not Hawaiian, but my ancestral support, like I've always felt like my guardians, you know, and I've always felt a lot of purpose and meaning. I don't know if I've necessarily felt exactly what that is, but I know what I'm good at. So I've always lived these chapters and experiences, and you know, kind of I almost like where I'm at in life today, of you know, every step from you know, being a surfer and diver my whole life. I did the permaculture thing, and then I really got into diving and worked doing coral restoration, and I have a whole, you know, experience in that, and got really into like coastal restoration and this whole big chapter of life. And now I'm a business owner, which is a whole trip, you know, the whole other spectrum. Now I'm like fully in the system, the freest I've ever felt from the system, and I'm like recording every dollar and paying taxes.
Yeah.
It's really funny.
Yeah.
Some 1984 shit.
Yeah.
I'm like, now that I'm in it, I'm free, because there's like the veil, you know, it's kind of this thing, right? And you're always chasing the money dream and chasing.
Yeah.
And then if you can just get past that into the kind of that spirit awareness and
to, like, get past worrying
pulling
about
the strings rather than being a puppet of the system.
How do you do that? Like,
good question.
Well, it's going to be different for everybody, but
Yeah.
I should say, how did you do it? So, because I can speak for myself personally, like there's always, doesn't matter how much I have, there's been money fear. It's so hard to get past money because everything takes money, you know?
I never had money. I never had money, and
so you never got attached to it?
I was raised thinking I was poor. When I was dating this girl from Paris, and we were down in Honolulu. Maybe I was like 25 at the time. Love this one so much, and I bought a flannel from a surf shop that cost like $50, and it was like a breakthrough for me, because I was raised like wipe your ass with one square of toilet paper. You know, like don't waste that. Youngest of 6, like your shoes are falling apart. Here's the shoe glue. You know, like glue them back together. Not that we really wore shoes, but
yeah.
you know, my brothers were much bigger than me and a few years older each one, and my oldest brother 10 years, and it's like oh yeah, I have a shirt for you, and it's like look and dress on me, you know. That sucked.
Yeah.
And cool shirt though, but
Hmm.
like, oh, I love this shirt, but it's for a monster.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so not that my mom, didn't make sure I was properly clothed and always fed, and um, I guess that's the thing where I always have this mentality of scarcity,
Hmm.
and then I broke through that, and kind of and I had that rebelling where I never really wanted money. I always for me, it was like money just came if you needed it. I was working, and it's like
Hmm.
however much money I made was how much I needed at the time.
Hmm.
But I always seemed to live somewhere, and people were like, wow, you're so talented. Here's a house for you. You're taking care of my land and my trees. And it was just always kind of like this big life barter where people always valued me. And I mean, that's when I was younger. Times are so different now. When I was younger, I would go hitchhiking with my backpack and my boots strapped to my backpack and a big machete and a big handsaw and big clippers, and I have it all outside of my backpack, and people would see me with all my tools, and they just freaking pull over. I'm just hitchhiking. They're like, "What are you doing? Where are you going? Can you help me with this?" Like every day, every single time. I mean, it's jungle warfare out here.
Yeah.
Everything's got vines growing over it, pulling your
Yep.
trees down, and the trees you planted are getting too big. I mean, people are just like, and it's anybody, it could be like everybody was so trusting back then, and just like, oh yeah, could you come help me with this and feed you and give you $100, and then I'd be like, oh cool, can you drop me off at the beach, and then I'd go party at the beach with my friends, and
Huh.
wake up and maybe it's someone else's house, who knows, and just like, all right, well, I got my tools strapped, all right, I'll make a little money, I gotta get some coffee.
See, that's
Whatever.
incredible. I bet you're
Yeah.
able to do that because that's the vibe you're putting out,
Yeah, it's just, that's the thing, is some people walk up and they're immediately like part of your tribe, right? Like
Hmm.
people, you've never met them before they walk up. Like when I met you, you came up and you're like, oh, what's up? I get a coffee, and I'm like, oh, what's up, dude?
Yeah,
Like, oh,
yeah.
check this out, do that. We're just bros right away,
Hmm.
and it's just that kind of thing where I've never not trusted that,
Hmm.
and so in life, it's like there's so few times where I've um, been without. I don't think I've ever been without.
Hmm.
I have nothing in my bank account. I mean, at times with my kid where it was like, I'm like, I'm gonna stop by someone's house because we're hungry,
Hmm.
and it's like we're just running on fumes here,
Hmm.
and like, hey, what's going on? You're like, oh, how you guys doing? And just start helping them with stuff and eat some food and hang out and get a little help with my kid, and it's
God,
just
I
like,
just did not know you could exist like this in this day and age, dude.
yeah.
That's so crazy.
I may have forgotten how. I run a
Yeah.
business now. I pay for everything. I'm slinging checks,
Yeah.
throwing money. I'm like, my employees, I'm like, you're making more than me. Here you go, Nah, just kidding. But sometimes it feels that way.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah, but I mean,
So you believe in God?
yeah, totally. Totally. I mean, I believe there's different realities of consciousness. And
Mm.
people say there's different dimensions, right?
Hmm.
And I've definitely been so depressed and so low in life where it's like the darkness is trying to pull you down and
Yeah.
bring you somewhere deeper, and you're always one thought away from saving yourself in that spiritual world, which is kind of how the power of your thoughts.
Huh.
You could have a thought that I've had thoughts in my life that I could just think I'm gonna bring me to tears, and I could just in 1 minute's time it just goes so dark and so deep into depression,
It's
and
so
then
hard to pull out of that too. You're able to
yeah,
do
but
that?
it is just the easiest like that. But
Ha-
like, okay, I have this ability where like I could see someone else there and like snap them out of it, but I can't really do it for myself.
Sure. Sure.
I'm like, come on, here's a hand, but then when I'm like, now it's happening to me. Oh, my hands are behind my back.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. It's hard to, well, because it's a brain problem, right? It's hard to fix the brain problem with the brain that created the problem.
Yeah,
I've,
yeah.
I'm really trying to figure out the whole positive thinking thing. Sounds like you're,
Well, I of course, there's like microdosing psychedelics if you're
Yeah.
really trapped. If you're
Yeah.
really trapped
Or
in.
macrodosing.
Yeah, totally. I saw this thing, and this guy was talking about it's like ruts in the snow, and your thoughts are just traveling down the same rut, and you can't get out of it.
Yeah.
And if you take some psychedelics, it's like a fresh snow. I've actually never even been in the snow, but the analogy's
Really?
working. Yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious. Snow sucks, man. It's cool in the movies.
I want to snowboard, man. It's a dream of mine.
Yeah.
But
Falling hurts.
it's like you take psychedelics, and it's like your brain is rewired. It's a
Yeah.
fresh, clean slate, and you can
Yeah.
kind of choose a new path from there.
That's it. That's the key. And you can feel it. So after you take psychedelics, the automatic thought loops and the ruminations and the traumatic thoughts, you have the ability to say, I don't want to think that. Whereas before, they just take you over. So then you can work on replacing it with positive thoughts and stuff. The psychedelics themselves don't necessarily, in my opinion, like fix you, but they give you the opportunity to have a fresh start and go put work in and start fixing yourself.
And I feel like I learned that really late, honestly,
Mm.
the real use of them. I mean, I had
Yeah.
my only experience when I was younger was like, oh, you take a bunch of acid, you
Yeah,
take a bunch of mushrooms,
That's all of us.
and you
yeah.
trip balls,
Yeah.
and the moon is the most beautiful.
Yep.
Your friends are the most beautiful you've ever seen, and you just get it, and you're one with God. And then the next day, you're like, yesterday was nuts, huh,
Yeah.
boys? It's like you're happy, and but I didn't really make the connection, but
Well, it was illegal. Now things are getting more legal, so we can actually get access to study these things.
Oh
and
yeah,
learn
when
how
I
to use
was
them.
younger, and part of the reason I got in trouble is if you got caught with acid, it was like manslaughter.
Wow.
So there's a lot of a certain amount, right, and
Yeah.
intent to sell. There's some,
Yeah.
I forget the whole weave they have around the law, but
Mhm.
it's very like in like today's age accepted and understood, and like I didn't know about microdosing until like 2 years ago.
Mm.
I always thought you slammed a handful of mushrooms and
Yep.
and I mean, it's not like doing it all the time, maybe years and years go by
Yeah.
and you have it, and then you're like, oh, it's come into my life. I always find these things, people talk a lot about ayahuasca, mushrooms, acid. I've never seeked any of these things out. It's always, and honestly, I've always thought like some really strong weed is kind of like its own trip in
It
itself.
definitely is. It
Like,
100% is. And yeah.
But my first rescue from I had actually really hurt myself surfing as a teenager,
Mm.
and I had some physical issues from it. I had landed on my head and compressed my spine and had
Oh,
some
dang.
fractures and stuff. And when I was exiting the situation with my daughter's mom to kind of for us to get our own freedom, which is, it's always really hard to navigate a breakup, right?
Right.
And I studied Ashtanga yoga. Very intense yoga practice. I studied from a guy who had learned from Batavi Joyce, the grandmaster in India. This guy had been one of his first Western students, and older man. And when I met, he's just recently passed away, but he was much older when I met him, and I got the power of my body for the first time since I'd done martial arts as a kid, and power of mind, and learning the philosophy behind yoga. And that was definitely my first, like depression, hard time rescue was the physical endurance along with it. So there's always a lot of paths, like, and spiritual path. And
Yeah.
I think most people find their salvation in Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Like almost everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Like people who are like living that light, good, successful, happy people all the time, who've been like, a lot of them are just like Christians who are just like, boom, Jesus is the way.
Mm-hmm.
He saved my life. Now that he came into my life,
And that's
and
awesome.
so that's one of the paths, you know. And other people, they spend their whole life in religion, and it's a fucking trap, and they're so miserable.
Yeah.
So, there's spiritual aspects to life. There's so many paths you can take to the.
Yeah, dude, breath work, meditation,
Yeah.
yoga, psychedelics, organized religion.
Totally.
Like, it's just...
So I think I tried them all.
Yeah. Do you ever pray? Like, do you ever communicate with God? What does that
Constantly,
look like?
yeah,
Like,
all the time.
Do you pray verbally, or is it with like a
Yeah,
silent
out
prayer
loud,
meditation?
a lot.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, I had two people. I was just not thinking about it because I had this Christian couple come up to my coffee shop when I was closing, and
Yeah.
like, oh, we guys had such a good conversation with you, and can we pray with you? And I'm like, yeah, here we
Yeah,
go.
yeah.
Like, this is my jam. Let's pray.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah, and I had um, I had to learn how to pray. It wasn't our thoughts are all prayers. It's
Hmm.
what you're thinking about. It's like a constant prayer, and that's what people get on the manifestation shit, where it's
Right.
like what you put out comes back.
Right.
So praying is constant, but intentional prayer is much more powerful than thought.
Can you give an
And
example of like an intentional prayer to
so for me, an intentional prayer is directing it towards your self. So my highest form of consciousness, to your ancestors, everyone who's got my back.
Hmm.
Any, say, guardians you have, like if there's like an angelic force that everybody has. One of my friend who taught me a lot about this, she always said, your army of angels. Everybody has this so many different levels of consciousness, and at different levels of consciousness there's really powerful beings that are supporting, and everybody's got them.
I think so
There's
too.
so much more.
So you're
you
not
know
necessarily praying to God. You're praying to
well, God
either.
first and foremost, but that's kind of the scale of it, I think.
Hmm.
you know
Well, everything is God
yeah,
essentially too,
exactly.
right?
So,
So yeah, your higher self, part of that is God. Part of us is God for sure. I feel what
and
you're
there's
saying.
different stuff, like maybe as a man you're like, I just felt like going into warrior mode
Hmm.
and kicking some ass. Like I just felt it. And
Hmm.
then you're like, you sit and you're like, ancestors, I feel like I'm going to warrior mode. And your ancestors are like, yeah, we fucked a lot of people up.
Hmm.
Like, that's
Hmm.
what we do. You're like, oh, cool. Like that's part of my genetic code and DNA is
Yeah.
actually that I was born with, whether I like it or not, is to have a cellular level warrior mode. Okay, that's what a peaceful person is. When you like have that kind of DNA and you choosing peace, that's fucking
Hmm.
the whole. My mom made me read The Peaceful Warrior when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Four Agreements, all these killer books. Books are killer, but
The calmest people I know are the most dangerous per se. They're the
yeah,
most trained. They've had the
yeah,
most violent experience, and
discipline,
yeah. Well, they
totally.
just yeah. It's there's especially people that have trained martial arts or any sort of fighting sport. There's a calmness about them that I don't feel from very many other people.
Yeah, there's like the peace, love, harmless people, and then
Hmm.
there's the peaceful people that
Yeah.
are like the fucking warriors.
Yeah. Yeah. Right on, man.
That's not taught in culture today, and that's why you know uh, people are so confused about everything happening in them. It's
Yeah.
just like, well, your ancestors were badasses.
Yeah. And that
Like,
needs to be channeled.
yeah,
Like you should try hunting, try
yeah,
combat sports, exercise, like go
or
out and
a
test your
manhood
endurance.
initiation.
Yeah.
Who's
Yeah,
your
rite of
men
passage.
elders? I not getting to be with my father was what initiated so much tragedies in my life, and
Mm.
you know, it took me 15 years to figure that out. I think.
Yeah.
From that until my late 20s was like, oh shit, where did this all start? Like when you reflect and you're like, okay, now I'll go back farther, and then you kind of you like lifting up. Going back is hard because it's like a domino effect. So you have to like
Hmm.
go and like if you're coming back from the present, it's like you're trying to push all this up, and that's what I always say, like, oh, get to the root of the problem, because it's always easier to pick it all up from where it started rather than the weight of everything that's pushed you up to where you are. Or
Hmm.
that is hard to explain.
No,
But,
no, I'm with you.
yeah,
So when you pray, do you ever feel like you get answers to those prayers? And if so, what does that communication look like? I
yeah.
I love
I
asking
think
people
people
that.
should never discount the funny things.
It does seem like the
Like,
universe has a sense of humor, doesn't it?
yeah, like
Yeah.
like you really just give a really special prayer, and all of a sudden there's a rooster just like kind of when you
Yes.
end, or a
Yes.
gecko starts laughing, that
Mm-hmm.
kind of stuff. Or you're out on the ocean praying, and then it's like all of a sudden a big sailfin swims up next to you and comes above the water, that kind of stuff, you know,
Yeah.
or like,
And that,
you know, I've never had a time where I was like, God, please, I just can't do it anymore. I need you to just send me a sign. And I've never had a time where I've done that and not had an immediate response of some sort. You got to mean it though. You have like,
yeah, and you have to be
you have to
open
be
to it.
desperate enough to say that.
Or yeah, open enough. Yeah.
There's some other times in my life I'm like, I can't claw myself out.
Those are the "Where are you" prayers. Those are.
Yeah, the "Where are you?" Show me,
dude. I've had some very serious "Where are you" prayers.
But you know, for me, like my daughter reminds me a lot. You know, and I get these funny reminders, like I had to take her to the airport once to fly back to Big Island, and she's like, "Can we get donuts on the way? I want to get donuts." I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And the donut place is just closed on the way, and she's like, "It's all good. I didn't even really want them. Who cares?" And then we roll into the airport parking lot, and there's this Bretta, and he's like, "Oh, can you drop my car? You can have my spot." I'm like, "Of course, dude." Like, jump his car, and then, you know, he pulls out of the spot, and then he jumps out, and he hands us a thing of Krispy Kreme donuts. He just flew back from like Maui, where they have this, you know, special donut store that's not on Kauai. And he's like, "I just want to give you guys a dozen donuts." I'm like, "Oh no, it's all good, it's all good." And I'm like, "Oh, thanks." And I look at my daughter, and she's like, "Yeah, you know, like, and that's just, you know, kids need answers to their prayers in different ways. Like having a positive outlook gets you what you want. You know, like that's simple, right?
Explain that a little bit. So like thinking positive, talking positive.
Yeah, like just, you know, her reaction to the donut store being closed was, "It's all good. I didn't even really want it. Let it go." Just acceptance, flow. You know, positive outlook. And the same thing happened. I just picked her up last Sunday. She was off island for the summer with her mom, and she's, you know, she's like, "Dad, I know you don't want me to get these things, but I want to get some stuff from Target, you know, like hair products. Don't read the labels." You know?
Yes.
Like the hippie dad, like, "Look up all these labels."
Yes.
She's like, "I just want to get like these things, please, you know, like don't look at the labels, you know, like all my friends have them, come on." And like, okay, we're in Target, and this guy in front of us is like, I see he's going down, this older gentleman.
Oh no.
He's fucking going down. And my daughter was kind of blocking me from getting to him. And I pushed her out of the way a little bit and like dove to catch this guy. And I still didn't get to him in time. And I pick him up off the ground and sit him. I, you know, clear these flowers on this display and put him there as a bench, you know, talking to him. And he's positive, stoked, and go get him a electric, you know, shopping cart. And I'm like, "Ah, just use this, man. This is so much funner. You know, I always wanted to use these things." And he's laughing and you know, I'm like, "Oh, sorry to my daughter that I pushed you out of the way." And she's like, "I totally get it," you know. And then we go by another store, Costco, after that to get some organic milk. I try to serve the high grade stuff in my coffee truck, and can't get it from some other suppliers. And
sure.
So we're at Costco, and we're leaving, and this older lady in one of those electric, you know, shopping carts where you sit there and it's got a little throttle and everything. She starts waving us down. I'm like, "Oh, hey, what's up?" You know, and she's like, "Hey, we're gonna leave town next week, and we got this big thing of orange juices. Can we give you some of the orange juices?" And I'm like, "Sure, you know, like cool, why not, right?" And she gives these orange juices, and then and I just, you know, we're driving back. I'm just thinking about like, wow, you know, I always get those reminders, like, you know, it's like, oh, you help someone, and it's like you're always, you know, thanked later. You know, as people are like, "Oh, karma," or whatever. You know, like,
it's real. I don't know if it's called karma, but it's real. You're definitely getting back what you put out, and I think helping people is probably one of the most important things we can do here while we're on this, having this human experience.
Totally.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. It helps the channel grow, and more importantly, helps the guests feel really good. Please send a supportive comment. All right, thanks, guys.